This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 40, covering Jessica Jones, episode 10, aka 1000 Cuts. Welcome back to Defenders TV Podcast. This is episode 40, covering Jessica Jones, aka 1000 Cuts, which is episode 10 of the Netflix show. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
I'm one of your other hosts, John.
Rounding out the crew, I'm Chris.
Welcome back, guys, and a very happy New Year to all of our listeners. We're recording this podcast just after the New Year has been ushered in, so welcome to 2016. And we're still covering Jessica Jones, the wonderful Netflix TV show. How are you guys? How was your New Year's?
It was
good.
Really
good. Yeah. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, no, completely happy New Year, and I'm quite happy to say we're in the year of comic book heaven.
Absolutely.
With all our different, both DC, sorry to say it, and Marvel, having a bucket load of entries this year.
May it be a strange one, indeed.
Oh, everything leads to November.
November 2016, this year. Woohoo! The year arrives.
Yes, with the movie release of Doctor Strange, just in case you haven't been following John's commentary every episode.
With some great stills released on Entertainment Weekly, which looked pretty cool now. I kind of like the outfit. I'm glad they went with the pick-your-nose collars still. That was cool. Yeah, it seemed fresh and really kind of intricate design on his cape and sort of the main suit of the Sorcerer Supreme. Really detailed kind of stitch work there. And then, of course, the Eye of Agamotto.
Yes, and Benedict Cumberbatch did mention in his interview that was the first time he put on the costume. He hasn't actually worn it for the filming prior to those photographs that were in Entertainment Weekly, but very cool to see Doctor Strange fully suited up.
Definitely.
I was more interested in the actual the visual representation of his powers. That was cool.
That was quite interesting.
But now I'm curious, I think is probably the best way, is that what it's going to look like in the film?
Yeah.
Or was this just give it a magical look
a bit
for
of
the
a
photo?
mock-up for the photo, yeah.
And he will be chanting.
Yeah, that was a great thing I heard.
And the look of it, the one with all the kind of different symbols, that was very Straczynski, I thought, from his run of re-looking at and renewing the origins of Strange in Strange. The comic run, I think it was 5 or 6 comic issues. And then I really like that. I like the more lightning kind of look of it for me. That was my kind of bent on it. But then some of the concept art, I loved the one of him in the hospital with his hands, which kind of looked like a photo until you really looked at it and you realized it was concept art. But also the one that looked like it was in space, but I think it was him on or going into the astral plane. And if that's how they're going to represent him glowing blue, that looked pretty cool as well.
Yeah,
I must say, I was really impressed with that.
Yeah, lots of interesting stuff coming up in Doctor Strange, definitely. Along with Doctor Strange in 2016, we've got a ton of other films and TV shows that we're going to be covering. We're on episode 10 of Jessica Jones now, obviously, on our Netflix coverage. What was also in the EW magazine was some photographs of season 2 of Daredevil. And we've had pretty rough confirmation that Daredevil's actually going to be coming out a little bit earlier than we thought in 2016. We've got a rough confirmed date of March, and apparently Entertainment Weekly have said that that date wasn't supposed to appear in the magazine. They left it in by mistake, so that's possibly they weren't supposed to put that date in, or that it was left in and Netflix weren't aware of it, or Netflix haven't confirmed it yet. But it is very possible that we'll be getting Daredevil in March of this year, which should line up almost perfectly with the end of Agent Carter, which is our next show that we'll be covering. So we could be going straight from Jessica Jones to Agent Carter and then directly into Daredevil. So we'll have a lot of podcasts coming up in the first quarter of the year.
Absolutely.
The eagle eye, some people are looking at the Daredevil costume in the stills that were released.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have 3 stills. We have one of Daredevil tied up, looking at the Punisher.
Yeah.
We have Elektra in her normal garb, her civilian wear, and there's just another one of basically Daredevil in a meat packing factory kind of thing.
Right.
But it looks like the suit's changed again, slightly from what we saw in the very last episode. So somehow we saw version 1, and this is now version 2.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to end up very Iron Man-esque.
Possibly.
It's like Mark 5.2.
Yeah.
No, he slowly adds to it and adds to it. So by the time we get to the actual Defenders, It's not. We could have the black suit.
He could be in the yellow suit.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that'd be good.
I'm not sure. I think I'm liking the red suit. But yeah, definitely some iterations to go on that. But yeah, loads of stuff covering in 2016. Hope you guys have had a good New Year celebration, and hopefully you're looking forward to as much stuff coming this year from Marvel and DC, as Chris said, as much as we are. I think it's time to get on with the episode this week, talking about 1000 Cuts, episode 10 of Jessica Jones. This episode was directed by Rosemary Rodriguez and written again by Dana Barata and Mika Schraft. John, do you want to tell us what we got in this shocking episode?
Shocking is the word. In the aftermath of Kilgrave's escape from his hermetic prison, things keep on getting worse for Jessica, her friends, and her associates, as events spiral out of control. Evidence against Kilgrave at the abandoned CDC center is destroyed by a potential new foe who is remorseless in his quest to kill Kilgrave. Hogarth is forced by Kilgrave to her ex-wife's house as he seeks medical attention. But in a manner of speaking, she is soon put under the scalpel herself, as her deceitful and manipulative past comes back with a vengeance to haunt her. Despite all these setbacks, there is a glimmer of hope, as the reason for Kilgrave's powers is revealed by his scientist father, Albert. However, as they seek to level the playing field in their fight against Kilgrave, Jessica is faced with a series of choices that will shape the destinies of the people that surround her.
I could say that again. Lots of
Big
choices
time.
in there. Overall,
Wow.
guys, overall, what do you think, John?
Wow. I think for me, actually, the best episode so far.
Wow.
This was two massive, shocking moments for me. A really kind of good chase down, I found. There was the reveal, really, of Simpson and how those pills are affecting him, again, in another shocking manner. And then, as one of my big points, all hope is lost.
Mm-hmm.
It really, from the moment of triumph where they've got Kilgrave captured and in behind the glass, it all falls apart and it just gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. Chris, what do you think overall?
Good. Yeah, no, I liked it. It was, it seems that we're sticking to the kind of very heroic kind of trope where the hero starts as nothing, and then slowly built up, then goes through a larger kind of bad patch, a large drop, and now we've now in the last 4 episodes, we're going to see her slowly try and go back up, but they seem to be going against that slightly, which is, it's just knockback after knockback after knockback for
Absolutely.
Jessica. I think I prefer that style. I have to admit, I think it's more human, and I think there's like another thing by the writer, it's just well crafted. They're giving certain characters more backstory. Another thing, we'll get into that more later. But I think that's one of the things I like, that we're seeing certain characters are being hopefully built up for something greater. And I think that was again, we'll get to it.
Yeah. For me, I kind of agree with John. This is another one of my favorite episodes of the series so far. So much happened in this episode and so many shocking things that we will talk about. Again, if this is your first time joining us, which would be a bit of a surprise, we're 10 episodes into Jessica Jones, so maybe you want to go back and listen to the other ones. But the way we cover our episodes, we take 5 points each that hopefully will cover all the major elements of the episode, and we talk them through as we go.
So Derek, then, what's your first point?
My first point is right at the beginning of the episode. I love how it's connected to how episode 9 ended, which is essentially Trish on the floor crying because she can't get a bullet inside her head, which was what she was forced to do by Kilgrave. I just love this little concept of he's left this idea in her head that she has to do this. So she's sitting on the floor pushing a bullet casing towards her head, trying to fit it inside somehow. And Jessica overturns it and says, just put it in your mouth. Once it's in your mouth, that means it's inside your head. That will explain to your brain that you've done what Kilgrave has said that you must do. And then she's able to escape Kilgrave's grasp, but realizes at this point the real power of Kilgrave. This is the first time really that Kilgrave has had an effect on Trish directly, isn't it?
Yeah.
She's been involved in taking care of Jessica for years now, for a year now, after all the impact that Kilgrave has had on her. But this is the first time that he's had an impact on her, and I really can see this is going to have some effect on Trish going forward.
Yeah, Trish is quite freaked out by this, definitely, over the course of this episode. But also, I like the way it follows immediately on from the events of episode 9. It's really good. I think the whole getting the bullet inside the head, as you say, that's just a really nice touch.
Yeah.
I was thinking, could she shove it up her nose, down her ear, something like that
I like
as
the
well.
mouth is a better idea.
Yeah, mouth is definitely a better idea. But I liked this whole immediate follow on. It was really good. Even just seeing Kilgrave kind of escaping and Hogarth as well. That was a neat little touch as well. Just how those two who had run out of the building, how they kind of connected in by doing that, which we see later with Hogarth taking Kilgrave for a spin in a car.
Yeah, because it kind of ended at the end of episode 9 where Jessica exits the building. It looks like Kilgrave has disappeared in a puff of smoke almost. So I like that they explained that.
Absolutely.
He's not Batman. He's not just disappearing into the ether. He's gone and gotten into a car and told someone to drive him away, which I liked. But I also, again, to come back a little bit to the influence of Kilgrave, I like the fact that all the way throughout the episode, his father Albert is constantly looking for a way to cut out his own heart as well, because the influence of Kilgrave is still on him as well. So
that persistence of Kilgrave's mind control is really, really good, I think.
Yeah.
The one thing I think they kind of briefly brushed over was Officer Clements.
Mm-hmm.
He was told to follow.
Yeah.
But then he came back.
Didn't they tell the last thing he says to him was to take down Jessica, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So you're right. He should have been still trying to attack Jessica.
It was just kind of like, then all of a sudden he just kind of wanders back in with a med kit. I was like, okay, I'm going to let it go. I'll let it go. Let's go with the story on this one. It's fine. But it was just slightly, I was like, what? Because that would be a more humorous, every kind of turn he's trying to just like rugby tackle her.
Yeah.
It would like, randomly she's just holding him out by the head like you would a toddler.
Although again, maybe, just thinking it out loud, maybe because he did attack her and then she knocked him out, maybe that's now
exactly,
gone with Kilgrave's control. Maybe that's what it was. But that was my first point. Chris, do you want to give us your first one?
Yeah, so I'm going to skip ahead slightly to when we're in Wendy's house.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a brief tidbit of information and from Hogarth in that she talks about how Kilgrave was going to be a father.
Yes.
They took the aborted fetus,
mm-hmm.
and she gave it to Hammond Industries.
Mm-hmm. Hammond's Labs. Yeah.
Hammond's Labs, excuse me. And the bit that I found really funny or interesting was the part where she says nothing came from it. They tried to replicate the powers, and nothing came from it. And then that's it. It's too much to be a dead end.
Yeah.
There's too much of something there. I just thought it was a very odd way. And again, we know she wasn't lying because Kilgrave told her to tell me something I don't know.
Yes, I love
and she
that
told the truth.
Yeah.
So we're going, why the wild goose chase?
Mm-hmm.
I think is the best way of putting it. So it's like, he let it blow over.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get anything more on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of like, oh yeah, it's in the background. There you go. So now, unless we get something where they're going to now go to the labs and find lots of other things, but then it leads into, okay, well, we had Luke saying that he was created, and aside from Project Rebirth, which is Captain America's kind of that whole side, I think we discussed it briefly when we talked about Luke and his origins from the Marvel Netflix, saying he was experimented upon. Is this where we're going to get that? Is that what we're going to find? Jessica's going to go into this place in the end of the series or some next episode and kind of go, oh, okay, so here, and then we just see loads of different kind of medical tubes with different kind of disfigured people and like other superpowered individuals, with being experimented upon, etc., etc.
Right.
So no, I just thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
It's too much to be a red herring.
Yeah. No, I definitely loved, again, as you say, Kilgrave's kind of lead in for this was just tell me something I don't know. And she does, which again is, watch your words, Kilgrave, because you might get something that you don't even want. But he does say to her, now tell me where my child is. Even though she describes it as the remains this time, she doesn't describe it as a fetus. She now describes it as the remains. And then he says to her, where's my child? So, Kilgrave is now armed with the knowledge of where his child is. So potentially we'll see that in a future episode. He goes to Hammond Labs to reclaim, potentially the remains. What I did was I looked up what Hammond Labs is and what the connection is. So that's why I remembered the name. Hammond Labs is where the character Speedball came from. He was, the original character was working in Hammond Labs when he was when an experiment went awry and turned him into the character of Speedball, which, as so many Marvel fans might know, he's the kickoff of Civil War is the character Speedball exploding and taking out a city, essentially. So I like the little connection there that there's going to be that this lab exists in the MCU, and now could potentially form part of Civil War now. So I like the little call out there. But,
yeah, it's a good little call out, definitely. Yeah.
I love the way that so many superheroes are now created by accidents in labs. You'd think they get better procedures or something at this point. It's like, oh, we've had X amount of people suddenly die or be transformed. Okay, so from now on, extra gloves, people, full body suits.
Where's health
something,
and safety?
Health and safety. I'm just going like, come on. You'd think after a while they just go, okay, we don't want anyone else being irradiated by a spider.
Yeah.
Or bitten by an irradiated spider. So let's just put them in cages from now on. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love the way Kilgrave actually, when he says, tell me something I don't know, and she spills the beans. I love that he says, how refreshing honesty is, because he wasn't expecting to get a response. I loved that. I thought that was really good. And also we do get confirmation that, she did try to replicate those powers and that failed. So there's absolute confirmation that she was looking to do this, whether it was professionally for her career as a lawyer, or whether it was simply to try and persuade Wendy to sign the papers. Her divorce papers, Hogarth's divorce papers, we don't know, but we do see that she was trying and ultimately it failed. So I really like that bit, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think this leads me on to my first point, just about the 1,000 cuts.
Oh yeah.
It's the title of the episode, and with some justification, it's a brutal scene, but on so many different levels. I loved the conversation between Wendy and Kilgrave, whilst Wendy's sort of patching him up from the bullet wound that Kilgrave sustained. And she just goes, how do you avenge 1,000 cuts, over the time we've spent together with Hogarth?
Yeah.
And there's kind of almost like a connection between Wendy and Kilgrave, as he's kind of saying, well, I did up, Jessica's old house and I got no gratitude either, and all this kind of thing. There's almost like this mini temporary connection between the two of them. And then as he's leaving, because he thinks Jessica, is at the door, he says, you want death by 1,000 cuts? Do it, as he tells Wendy, essentially. And you just then get into this absolutely, oh my God, this is happening. The thought of paper cuts and just how irritating and painful they are.
Yeah.
But that was just oh my God. I actually did feel sorry for Hogarth.
Oh, absolutely.
And then just she's clasping at the knife to try and stop her, and the scream is a really, unsettling scene
Absolutely.
for me. Just this almost automaton of Wendy just slicing down across the wrists, across the forearms, the face, the legs. I was like, oh my God. But this was a huge oh my God moment for me in this episode.
And you get the feeling that by the instruction given by Kilgrave that it is going to be 1,000 cuts, and it's only number 1,000 is where she's going to slit her throat or something like that, where it's going to kill her. The other 999 cuts are just going to damage her. That's so brutal and so well put together.
And I think we only get up to 29 cuts, and there's already a ton of blood all over the place. Before obviously intervention of Pam into the proceedings, but it's just, oh my goodness, what a disturbing scene, but really good, really well done.
Yeah, and that was actually one of my points. It reminded me of some of the kind of classic horror films that we got from, say, Hammer House Horror before it went 70s gore-esque, or gorephobia, Gortacular, I think they called it. Gorefest.
Yeah.
It was Gortacular. And that's what it was. It was so brilliant because it was just so well put together, even because I think it was whoever did the sound mixing for this episode got if you listen carefully, and I rewound it, you can hear the blades slicing through the air.
Right.
That swoosh sound.
Yeah.
And then the kind of blade cutting flesh cutting through. And then obviously we had that amazing scene where Hogarth catches the knife in her hand. And you're like, okay, this is brilliant. And it was just Wendy slices
Yeah.
the knife back,
Yeah.
and you just see this massive gash across the hand. It was spectacular, and I really thought it was so well put together. For me, this scene was kind of indicative of what Jessica Jones is. We haven't had these spectacular corridor fight scenes like we had in Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
This is more, I think we've talked about, and I continuously bring it up, I think this is more of a thinker's thriller.
Yes.
Kind of horror film. Like, almost like a Norman Bates styled. So, like, you don't have over-the-top gore.
Mm-hmm.
You have just enough that will make you kind of cringe or kind of just go, oh, no, that's wrong. Like, the lick. This was the lick again. This was Kilgrave's lick from, I think it was episode 1.
Yeah.
And this was it, but it was more, okay, well, we could just have Wendy beating her with something.
Yeah.
Just continuously beating. No. Death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
Just, it was like, okay, slowly 1, 2, 3. And when she got up to 22, I think, and Hogarth's, it's the first time, Carrie-Anne Moss carried more because the whole point of Hogarth has been that cold lawyer. But then you see, Carrie-Anne Moss show the pure terror in her.
Yeah. The survival thing comes in. Yeah,
it was fantastic. It was just really well acted, and I think that's why I think, as of right now, I'm still more of a fan of Jessica Jones than Daredevil. Right. I love my action, but this show is more kind of autonomous.
Yeah, I think one of the other things I really liked about this scene was that up until Kilgrave orders Wendy, you want death by 1,000 cuts, off you go, extract your revenge. Up till that point, we did find out that Hogarth was the one in cahoots with Kilgrave to release him. Uh-huh. But also that once they're back at Wendy's, there is a suggestion that he could still tell Wendy to sign Hogarth's divorce papers.
Yeah.
So you kind of think that maybe it's going down that route. The only slight qualification of it that Kilgrave says is, if I choose to.
Mm-hmm. I'm a man of my words.
Yeah. You don't know whether he's actually going to do it. And in the end, he turns on Hogarth and gets Wendy to essentially kill her very slowly. And then it's something you would expect from a torture scene where someone's chained up. But because it's in Hogarth's pinned down almost in that sense. And because it's mind control and it's someone who necessarily wouldn't resort to that kind of violence.
Absolutely.
That's as well what increases the shock value, and you're kind of going, whoa. It's like me doing it to someone under someone's influence. You just can't comprehend, because you've heard anyway from all the victims of Kilgrave that they knew that they were doing something that they wanted to stop. So, I mean, how that is impacting on Wendy is like crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, Chris, the fact that this is in a suburban home as well is very different to the kind of stuff that we've seen in other shows like Daredevil. This isn't two superpowered beings or a ninja versus someone that's been trained for years in martial arts having their big fight sequence. This is a former wives fighting each other in their home, in their former home, essentially.
And a doctor.
And
that's the bit where I was like, perfect person to do it.
Absolutely.
Because she knows where the vital arteries are. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons we're going to find that Jerry survived. Well, we see that she survived well. And it's like she only had a few bandages because it was all aimed very particular and meticulously aimed, if you want to say that.
Yep. She knows that she can definitely have those 999 cuts without killing her.
Yeah.
And then deal the final blow, but she would have been a bloody pulp. If it had gone 999 more cuts.
It's going to be like shredded pork.
Yeah.
That's all I kind of was thinking. Is like, how far down this 1,000 cuts are they going to go? So like an amazing kind of concept to put on the screen.
Absolutely.
I think definitely.
Yeah. And leading on from that, for my next point, it's Pam. Pam jumping in to, I suppose, save the day. When you think that there's no way that Hogarth can get out of this situation. The door is banging. You think it might be Jessica, but it is in fact Pam who comes in to save the day by killing Wendy. Brutal death scene.
Unknowingly though, not intentionally.
Absolutely, but a brutal death scene for poor Wendy. She's sliced through by the pane of glass on top of the glass tabletop. Makes me want to rethink having a glass tabletop in my own home in case I trip.
Yeah.
At all.
I want a solid polystyrene
absolutely.
coffee table. I think definitely,
definitely. But really brutal scene, and it kind of Pam has always been around in the background. I think I've mentioned it a few times. Every time that Hogarth and Wendy are together, Pam has always been around. Every time they've been together all the way throughout the season so far. And it shows here, there's a reason for that, I suppose. Pam's nervous about the two of them being together, that there might be something going on between them almost.
What's a cheater, always a cheater?
Yeah, that's what she seems to think. And yeah, she's questioning whether, why is it that Hogarth is leading Kilgrave back to Wendy's home. She knows maybe she's going to use Kilgrave to get Pam to sign the divorce papers, which is in fact what she was doing. But yeah, she ends off murdering her and going into a really bad situation, which is being on the opposite side of Hogarth. And Hogarth immediately distances herself from Pam. The words that she chooses of "it's complicated," essentially, the lies that she starts to tell to Pam so that she can distance herself and just put all the blame for the death of Wendy on her and not have any involvement herself. Really, really despicable character, despite the fact that her life was probably saved by Pam. But a fantastic scene.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was one of my points as well. Just that you see, in a flash, the change of Pam and Hogarth's relationship. Mm-hmm. Pam actually coming in to save the woman who she does care for and who she does love, even though it has obviously split up Hogarth and Wendy, and unintentionally then killing Wendy, which I just think it's just such a sad death.
Yeah.
Because Wendy has been in tears, she's been absolutely torn up by Hogarth, and then she's doing something that's out of her control, and by the blow to the head, then she's killed with the table corner going straight through her head. Really sad for Wendy, but then for Pam, it becomes equally tragic because, as you say, she sees Hogarth for what she is. Yeah. I love how she describes it, that she goes, "Now that I understand your bullshit, that's all I can see."
Yeah.
It's the fact that she's been fed the similar lines probably before, and she's now seeing, as Hogarth is trying to distance herself from it, and really just protect herself. She sees that Hogarth is absolutely 100% selfish to the core.
Yeah.
Completely. Despite losing someone that she's spent time with, married in Wendy, she's still all about herself. Completely self-centered. Absolutely horrid person.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of redeeming to do if she is to be, Danny Rand's Jerry Hogarth.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Now, so that was part of my point, and I'm going to jump in here. We briefly talked about it earlier, the downfall of Hogarth. Mm-hmm. We thought that by the end of the series, she'd be redeeming herself so that she comes in and comes as part of the Danny Rand.
Yeah.
I think now this is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
I think this is the birth of a Wilson Fisk-esque supervillain for the Marvel Netflix universe.
It's scary, isn't it?
Because it's literally, we've seen her, we know she was cold as a lawyer, but now she's distancing herself from the one she loves. She's killed her ex-wife. Yeah. Well, she hasn't, but she is accomplice. She's taken aborted fetuses to try and make some mind control power. She's also looked at trying to get Kilgrave power to, and she freed Kilgrave.
Yeah.
She cut the wire. And I think this is the birth of a new villain. And I think that's where, again, complete speculation, but she could be the evil, the bad person, the supervillain in the Iron Fist series. She forcibly takes over Rand Industries or Rand Corporation, whatever they decide to call it, so that she becomes the bad person. And we don't get a redeeming factor. I don't know how they can redeem this character back.
Yeah. It's interesting because during this episode, I actually thought that potentially by her being controlled by Kilgrave to be driven home, by him having Wendy attack her with a knife. I thought that all that was going to happen was that Wendy was going to be stopped by either Jessica, well, probably Jessica is what I thought, and that would make Hogarth change her ways and become one of the survivor victims, essentially, of Kilgrave, turn around, and that could have been her redeeming. But they chose to go completely opposite way than I was expecting, and for her to basically throw Pam under the bus. So now the second most despicable character in the show, right behind Kilgrave for me, is Hogarth.
Absolutely.
And she's gotten exactly what she wants, and she has a way of stepping away from it and just leaving all the blame on Pam now.
It's like she didn't even blink. She didn't even consider changing direction. She stayed on the straight and narrow of being a bitter, cold-hearted lawyer. Yeah. Ultimately,
there's a B word there that we're going to use. But
well, and I love the fact that Jessica kind of points this out. She goes, what you've done to Wendy, and what you've done by allowing Kilgrave to control her like this, that's the murder here. And to Pam, she says, what you did was self-defense for the person she loved. But in controlling Wendy and Pam, in everything that Jessica has seen of Hogarth, she pinpoints Wendy's death as Hogarth murdering her through Kilgrave's actions, ultimately. Yeah. So it's a real sort of the responsibility transfer that even Jessica puts onto Hogarth for Wendy's death is incredible, really. Because technically, then we see Hogarth being quite technical about it, of, I didn't do it. Yeah. It was Pam. But the emotional aspect of it is kind of, yes, Hogarth, it's you. Yeah. You are the bad person. You are responsible for everything that's happened here by allowing Kilgrave to escape from the CDC center.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
But then we also have Hogarth, so leading further speculation to that she may be a supervillain type person in either Jessica Jones season 2 or the Iron Fist or some other type of part. Mm-hmm. Is she knows about Jessica's powers. Yeah. She's building a little army with Hammond Labs, and potentially becoming this. So we have that kind of Lex Luthor knowing about Clark Kent's alternate persona. Right. But there is no persona. It's just she knows who Jessica is. She knows what Jessica can do. She knows who her friends are. Mm-hmm. She knows about Trish. She knows about... So she knows everything. Yeah. So like it's this kind of... again, I don't see where the redemption can come from.
Yeah, I agree.
Aside from a huge self-sacrificing part in the next 3 episodes where she jumps in front of a bullet or something.
She'd have to do something very big, and I'm wondering, will she jump in front of a bullet, or will there be a bullet with her name on it before the season's out? So either she's a big bad for one of the other shows, or our listeners are laughing again about the fact that we have predicted a future for a character that has no future, as happened for a number of characters in this episode. I think that covered off a point for each of us there. Who wants to go next for their point?
Well, I have another big point.
Go for it.
But there's a lot of big points in this. And that is... It's kind of a double header, really, but primarily it's the shocking jump out of the seat. Oh my God, I can't believe he just did that. Death of Detective Clemens.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like, I just was so not expecting it. Even though I knew that Simpson was moving down a darker path, that, he was getting obsessive, he was kind of getting secretive and withdrawn from Trish and so on. I didn't think, given the conversation about, you're Detective Clemens from the precinct, you're Sergeant Simpson and all this kind of thing, this kind of professional discourse between the two, I wasn't expecting him to turn around and blast a hole through the center of Clemens' forehead. I was like, and then burn him alive.
Set him on fire,
it was absolutely like brutal, remorseless, violence from Simpson.
Yeah.
Like, get him off that medication. Like, seriously.
Absolutely. He needs to take some of those downers.
The blue pills. The blue pills.
Yeah, definitely. Really shocking scene for many reasons for me. Number one, I think I mentioned a couple episodes ago that I think the character of Clemens, I was expecting a lot more from him. Given he was played by probably one of my favorite characters from The Wire, the actor who played one of my favorite characters in The Wire, I was expecting to see a lot more of him on screen. We got a lot in episode 9 with the character. He stays behind to kind of wait for the cops to turn up. Simpson's the only cop that turns up, and then Simpson shoots him in the head. I was expecting more from the character, so I was completely taken aback at his death in this episode.
Yeah, no, and I actually thought, again, this character was going to be a more integral part of the series, of the universe. It's going to be the detective who knows what's going on with these special powered people, becomes almost an inside man for the police industry or the police precincts within New York, within Hell's Kitchen, that we're going to get. Oh, okay, this is the one they go to when nope, we're losing cops at an amazing rate at this point. And cops and journalists, and it's just like, no.
Much like our point during Daredevil, that we thought the journalist character was going to be a huge character, because he is in the comic books. Ben Urich, he's a huge character in the comic books, and yeah, obviously he's gone as well, so there's no connection to journalism in the show, and there's no connection to the police department, other than Simpson now, who doesn't seem to have done a day's work since he took the tablets.
And he destroys all the evidence that they've collected. I mean, this is the guy now that sees no way for Kilgrave to be put away other than by killing him. Yeah. Like, he's checked out of the system in terms of the system he used to work for, in terms of law and order. Like, none of it matters to him here. Like, this is a real kind of erosion of his kind of principles that he's had. And he destroys all that hard work that they've built up to get evidence to put Kilgrave away. I mean, we see essentially a birth of a villain here. Whether he's Nuke is another matter, but we also see his relationship with Trish, where she is becoming wary of him.
Absolutely.
He turns up at the hotel room where Trish and Albert are trying to work on this vaccine, and, you see that she is becoming a bit cautious about him. She realizes that he's not all there, as was the case before when, he was beneath the bed sheets.
And actually, just you mentioned he may be Nuke or may not be Nuke. A nice little Easter egg they did was the lighter. When he takes the lighter out of the pocket to torch the lab, the American sealed lab, there's an American flag on the lighter.
Oh, right.
Cool.
So that's what I was like, so rather than putting the American flag on his face.
Yeah.
Obviously, because that would just be, I think, slightly too comic-y.
A little weird.
It was just a nice touch there, I think.
Yeah.
Trish really would be wary of him. Like, what's that?
It's just nice face paint. Exactly. Nice tattoo.
Yeah. I did love his line to Officer Clemens just before killing him, is essentially, he says, there is no jail, there is no evidence, only justice, which really felt like a line the Punisher would say. I think I've mentioned before that I feel this character is very similar to the Punisher. I love that this is his justification to himself, is that there is no system anymore for him. The only system for him is now justice, and he believes the only justice is to kill Kilgrave. I love that line. I just thought it was a really well delivered line from Will Travel, as the character of Simpson. And I think it stands as his kind of, I'm sure there's going to be a Nuke poster coming out very soon after this series, or a couple of Nuke t-shirts with that line. There is no jail. There is no evidence. There's only justice. It really feels like a proper, super villain moment. Really.
Yeah. And I think the more and more I'm looking at these, the thinking back, we're just getting the birth of this universe. Mm-hmm. Now, I know people will argue that we've had the Marvel MCU for, 5, 10 years? No,
let's say 12 films.
12 films.
Yeah.
And they built up that universe. Actually, what we're looking at is the grittier. We've only had a year of the grittier Netflix, Max, whatever you want to call it, universe.
Yeah.
And so we've had the birth of the Kingpin now we're getting the birth of potentially an evil Hogarth, potentially a Nuke.
Yeah.
From the spilled images, or from the images on Entertainment Weekly, we're getting the birth of the Punisher and the birth of Elektra.
Yeah.
It's all built. It's all about birth. Yeah. It's just the origins we're getting. And so many people complain that we have a superhero origin fatigue.
Yeah.
I'm actually going, no, this is how it should be done.
Yeah.
This is, okay, they're explaining why we've seen Officer Simpson, descend into Nuke.
Yes.
We know he was at some point special ops.
Yeah.
We know he was already taking this program and pills because he knew who the doctor was.
Mm-hmm.
He knew the dosages and I think, give me the red pill. Oh no, now you've got the red, white and blue pill.
Yes.
And now we're just seeing that he is becoming I think he's becoming the Punisher of this other, because we'll know that the Punisher will probably become, at the end of season 2 of Daredevil, a nice person.
Maybe.
I'd say so. They're not going to keep him as a bad person.
Do you think they're going to meet up in Daredevil 2?
Yeah. I think there's going to...
Like, this town isn't big enough for the both of us kind of
Maybe.
thing.
Again.
Bit of a western.
Again, I'm not sure how Simpson's going to survive. When Jessica finds out what he's done, do you think his head's going to still remain on his shoulders?
I don't
after
say
killing Clemens, putting a bullet through his head? Do you think she'll find out?
Well, that's true, because the other thing is they don't know any of this at the moment.
Yeah.
So, well, who knows? But it's got to get messy.
Yeah.
It's really got to get messy. Because there's got to be the breakup of all breakups between Trish and Simpson.
Definitely. Definitely. And Jessica will not be standing back on that one. Chris, do you want to give us your next point?
Sure. And I hate to sound like a negative Nelly in this.
I think I know what you're going to say. This one,
yeah. For me, the down part of this episode has been the use of Robin.
Right.
From the start, the characters just, I mean, we've discussed possibly they're building up the origin of maybe Typhoid Mary or someone else, but she just seems so over the top, and it never really managed to fit into this gritty world for me.
Right.
The character was too comic-y, if you know what I mean. They've worked so hard in building up human-like characters with Hogarth, everyone with emotions and a good side, a dark side. But Robin has been very one-dimensional, if you want to call it that. Just the crazy upstairs housemate who loved her brother.
Yeah.
That was kind of it. And then it was now, she was always in the periphery, and now they suddenly went, no, we're going to bring her closer in, bring her deeper in, and the scene, and I think this is the one that really kind of clinched her bad usage, was the scene where she overhears Malcolm talking to the rest of the group.
Yeah.
Like, it just made no sense that she was just sitting there, and then, like, a really bad Bond villain just spins on the diner chair and goes, well, excuse me, hold on, well, good morning, Mr. Bond.
Yeah.
Kind of piece. And I don't know what it is about it was just...
I definitely agree with you on that. I think that was the weakest element of this episode. And it was only for a brief moment in time, was where she overhears the Kilgrave support group and Malcolm expressing and confessing to what he's had to do to help Jessica and to obviously remove Reuben to the bottom of the Hudson River. So I thought that seemed a bit convenient. I didn't really spot anywhere where she was following him for any reason. It just seemed that she popped up there. It was kind of like a Jack in a Box a bit for me. But I mean, I don't mind the kookiness of her. I don't necessarily think we've seen too much of her. We got in this episode to see much more, and I quite like the dynamic that they had written for her with Malcolm, but I definitely think she's kind of like an Annie Wilkes kind of character from Misery, sort of that kooky, dirty birdie kind of thing. There's an innocent craziness about her. Yeah. She's always got pet names for things, I think, and I kind of quite like that. I don't mind that so much, but I can see what you mean. I think it would be, she obviously still, up till that point had to find out about Reuben. Yeah. And I like how that kind of played out where, it's kind of one of my other points to an extent. I like the fact that she almost did a witch hunt on Jessica by bringing the people from the support group back to her apartment, inadvertently allowing, Kilgrave to escape. But a bit of 4x5 plywood straight across the back of the head twice, took Jessica down, which was interesting, I thought. But she kind of leads a witch hunt against Jessica. She's called her a cougar, charlatan, all this kind of thing all the way through. And this is like her extracting revenge because she blames now Jessica for the death of Reuben.
But I think that was the part for me that it just didn't click. That when she starts going over and trying to pull the support groups or gain their trust and loyalty, why would you listen to that crazy person?
Yeah.
That's the bit I didn't understand.
Right.
They've made her such a caricature of that crazy woman upstairs with the kooky names for things and stuff. Would you, as a support group, listen to a crazy person like that? And then you mentioned when she goes in and to the Jessica's apartment, it was like, rather than when she was taking the gag off, if they had made that someone else, you'd be feeling, oh no, don't do that, he's going to talk to you. Okay. With her, it was just like, oh, she's that bloody stupid. She's going to be that person, of course, and yeah.
Well, she also doesn't know what Kilgrave looks like, by the way.
But she doesn't know who Kilgrave is.
Yeah, so she's releasing a guy that's trapped in Jessica's apartment, so she's the only one that could have done it, because everybody else knows who Kilgrave is.
But if you had made it anyone else, just a normal bystander, you would have had that emotion of like, oh, don't do it, don't do it. With her, it's like, oh, just get it over and done with, we know you're going to do it. You're that type of person.
This is definitely where I disagree with you, actually, on this, because she has been kooky, but there's two lines that she delivers in that bar, which I think are perfect. I mean, one of the things is that she calls out Malcolm as being two-faced. And I think there's a genuine hurt there in her face that she's been betrayed by someone who, while she knew was friends with Jessica, she was willing to kind of go with and trust. And so, I like that. And the other one, and I think with the group is, I feel your sadness, but where's your rage? And she is correctly, from someone who doesn't know anything about Kilgrave, thinks that maybe it's made up to an extent because it's about mind control. Where's your rage? This Jessica is the cause of all of this group, of why you have been manipulated by Kilgrave. It's time to actually deal with the source of the problem. I mean, but that's because she doesn't know Kilgrave, and I think that's perfect as to how she would react, given how she thinks and views Jessica anyway, in relation to her brother. I think that's a really good way, and a sort of a natural way that she would react. And she doesn't know what he looks like, so it makes sense that she would release him, and I think she calls it out. She's got someone captive in here. She just doesn't trust her. Now, later on in the episode, she realizes her mistake. Definitely, obviously, while she's got a noose around her neck, I would say she quite clearly does. But that bit I really liked. The bit I didn't was where, as you say, she turns around like a Bond villain on the swivel stool of the bar and goes like, oh really? She finds it out that way. It would have been better if she had overheard it between Jessica and Malcolm in the corridor or something like that. But I like the way she rallied the group to get and take down Jessica. I thought that was it felt natural to me.
Absolutely, but it is one of those weird things about, this is a support group who is essentially saying you can say anything you want to about your experiences with Kilgrave, yet they're sitting in a public restaurant or a public bar. I don't know whether we know it's a diner or a restaurant. But that's very, very unusual for essentially a group that have gone through these kind of experiences, because what could happen is the person that you've done something to can overhear you because it's a public space. And this is what's happened here. It's just a very, very convenient and quite you're right. It's probably the weakest part of this episode, definitely, because no group would do this on a regular basis, meet at a restaurant and talk about the kind of stuff that Malcolm talks about. I chopped up a body and threw it in a river. He gets arrested for that regardless of the fact that it could be mind control or whatever. That could have been just a cop sitting beside and going, hang on a second, I've just heard someone someone confess a crime here, you know? They wouldn't talk about it. It's not natural. It's not realistic. And considering how realistic the show is, it's an unusual decision for them to do it.
No, and I think my point, and I agree with John, so it's okay, yes, I see why. I think it was just more, with a couple of sentences, she flipped the whole support group into a frenzy to go and attack Jessica's apartment.
But only the two men. The women didn't go with her.
That's true.
So it's not the whole group.
Okay.
She's only convincing some of the group. And because actually I think one of the women in the support group kind of defends the group as to what it's about, because she's kind of there going, you just sat round here talking, you're not doing anything about it. And I think she sees that they're wallowing or something in their own sort of self-pity. Go out now and use the rage and anger that you've got, because she's obviously filled with it and she wants to sort of express her anger in a different way. So that's kind of why I liked it. I think the other thing is, I would definitely agree with Derek there about, as Malcolm was confessing in a sense, I was like going, no, don't say this like this. This makes no sense. Because, I mean, it's not a patient-doctor confidentiality thing or a lawyer-client confidentiality thing. In a sense, these people should go out and report Malcolm to the police. And I don't know how that's going to play out moving forward. And I mean, if he's not immediately arrested or at least brought in as an accessory, because that wasn't under Kilgrave's control. I mean, that's the thing. So
he even says, this is something I'm doing to protect and help my friend Jessica. Not this is something I'm doing because Kilgrave told me to. You know, that's quite, you're right. Or I was right. It is really unusual for him to say all this in front of.
So it'd be interesting to see how this plays out in terms of consequences for Malcolm.
I suppose overall, I think this is just, my opinion was that this was a plot point that they needed to move along. And it was like, okay, we'll take the nearest thing available, which is the kooky caricature neighbor, which they haven't really rounded out. If you think of Robin in comparison to every other character in that show, every other main character, and in theory, she's a periphery character, but she's more main now. She's been in 4 episodes. Yeah. This being probably the 5th. As a plot point. She should be a bit more rounded out. We should have had a scene with her by herself, like we've had with Malcolm and stuff. And I think it was just very much to bring the story along. Yeah. And that's the only negative I have. And I agree with all your points, especially the talking in the diner. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. That's crazy. But you'd have a support group like AA in a church or a community center or something like that. This just seeing, I don't know what it is about the character that just annoys me. It's just, I think it's possibly that there's no, if we learned a bit, if she said something about why she is so kooky, why all these other things, if we just got more about why she is so kooky, why she had that fascination with her brother, why, just more. Yeah. I think then I would feel a bit, I wouldn't feel as much negativity towards that, but it just felt that they needed to, like I said, I think 3 times, it felt like, okay, we need to move this plot point along because Malcolm's getting away with chopping up with their body. Yeah. All right, let's just flip it. And then it could have been just delivery of like the Bond villain swinging around. Yeah. I
think for me anyway, and that's why I knew this was the scene you were going to talk about when you said you had a low point of the episode, because it was a bad point for me as well. So much other stuff that went on in this episode, definitely. And the end of the episode still has Robin involved, so I'm presuming she's coming back next episode, probably another 2 or 3 episodes, we'll see more of her. So hopefully we'll get a bit more of a backstory to explain the character that she is. But you're right, we probably should have seen her. I think I even mentioned in one of the episodes, we hadn't seen her for 3 episodes back to back, and you'd expect to have seen her at least once, because she was supposed to be living directly upstairs all the time, constantly there, yet she disappeared for 3 episodes. Didn't make sense. So, so she's back, she's made an impact. Not a great one, unfortunately, in this episode. So hopefully we'll see her back with a bit more of an explanation in the next one. But definitely understand the point. That is the low point of the episode. John, do you want to give us another point?
Yeah, I think it's more just to expand on, the whole, witch hunt that Robin leads in Jessica's apartment. It was kind of one of my points. It was part of my bigger point about Kilgrave being at Jessica's apartment. And he dangles the treat in front of Jessica that because Hope is about to be released from prison, and we see that he's gone to a judge, he's gone to the probation to say that she can be released and that actually she's innocent of all the charges. Yeah. So this is looking really hopeful for Hope. Pardon the pun, I suppose. But he's willing to do this and to leave everyone alone in exchange for his dad Albert. And I love how he phrases this to Jessica is, you can go back to your life of mediocrity and underachievement, and have hope in return for my dad.
Yeah.
There's all of this, we have this conversation and this dialogue about, there were 18 seconds, and this is where you see how delusional Kilgrave is, though, that he's basing his future with Jessica. He's bought this house, this childhood home, and renovated it in exactly the same way as when she was a child, on the basis that for 18 seconds, because he'd been timing it, she was out of his control and she decided to stay with him.
Yeah.
And I love this kind of interplay between the two of them where she remembers it differently, and also remembers it with a bit of fantastical elements attached in, with the sort of the white horse that will whisk her off out of harm's way into safety, as she's trying to jump off the side of the building where Kilgrave's apartment is. Maybe 6 months ago when she was still under the control of Kilgrave, or not for that 18 seconds. Yeah. But that to me was just like, okay, he's delusional. He's a few fruit and nuts short of a fruit cake, that kind of thing. He was mad here. He was going kind of crazy about and obsessed by this 18 seconds.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really nice insight into Kilgrave as well, because we're saying he's all mad and he's maybe like psychotic and all of this, but he is completely delusional then in regards to Jessica.
Yeah,
he thinks she loves him because for 18 seconds he didn't have to command her, and he was timing it. Like, that's nuts. It's crazy.
He specifically chose not to give her any commands for 12 hours so that it would all wear off essentially, and that she would have these 18 seconds. What did you guys think of the fantastical elements as you described them, John, of the white horse coming in? What did you think?
It didn't sit 100% well for me.
Right. That's what distracts Jessica, so that she doesn't make the leap when she has that break, isn't it? Yeah.
Because it was all in her mind, and it was like that was a great shot where she stepped off the building in the yellow dress and fluttered. That was amazing looking from a superpowered perspective.
Yeah.
I thought excellent. Didn't quite understand the white horse. Now I get it. Now I understand the white horse taking off this. It was just a bit too. I was like, It just wasn't. It was explained then after slightly that she says after X amount of times it was murky to try and get out of your control.
Yeah.
So it takes your time to build it up. But like, I don't know. It was slightly, as you say, fantastical.
Yeah.
Like, if they had it just kind of on the precipice of just trying to, stumbling back and forward for 12 seconds, you would go, oh, she's internally fighting, blah, 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 kind of thing. It was just too, I suppose I was watching this with my girlfriend, and she was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Why is there a white horse? And I was like, I had to even go, okay, but this is why she's imagining it.
Yeah, it was a hallucination in a flashback.
Yes.
And so it kind of felt even more fantastical.
Yeah.
In a sense, it wasn't. It was, as you say, the way that she didn't chuck herself off the building after Kilgrave had left her outside on the terrace.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seemed a bit strange because that's not happened in any of the previous episodes. No. Okay, you've had flashbacks, but this kind of taking you out of the moment, and sort of to to an extent, seen a perception of reality from Jessica.
Yeah.
It felt different, I suppose. But it didn't last for very long, and I think I could understand that and see that, and I thought that was, really, really good.
Yeah.
But I think, I just loved how it explained Kilgrave more, and I loved how, this was all part of a deal that he was brokering with her before she knocks him out, and then, gives a nice boot to the head for good measure to make sure he's knocked out.
Yeah.
This deal of, I'll give you back hope in exchange for my dad. Like, he knows that he's still out there. He knows that they're trying to keep him away from his dad. So I thought this was a nice little bit on how the plans all get interrupted then by Robin and this gang from the support group.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if that little fantastical element, as we're now calling it, I wonder if that's going to play out a little bit more in a future episode, because we still don't know why Jessica can resist, the control of Kilgrave at this stage. It seems most likely that she's been under his control much longer than anybody else, probably in his history, since he got these powers. So she lived with him for almost 6 months, essentially being under his control every single day, and then released for the small amount of time, which is where she has this vision, I suppose, of help, of safety, and then doesn't make the decision to run away and get away from him. So I'm wondering if that's just kind of an indication of, yes, okay, it is 12 hours from one command to the next command, and then you can release yourself from it, but is this the impact it has on your mind? By being under control for long term from Kilgrave, does it have a bit of an impact on your mind itself, and not allowing you to be completely released from it?
Well, it had an impact on my mind, because when I actually first saw the horse, I went, "Oh, it's a unicorn."
I think actually, if they had done that would have made more.
I know, but because it was a white horse, I was kind of looking for the horn on the unicorn's head. I was like, on the horse's head, I should say. It's not a unicorn, it's a horse. I was looking that it was a unicorn, and I was like going, okay, I think that's why I called it a fantastical thing. But it was, I liked how it explored a bit more of Jessica and Kilgrave's relationship, basically.
Definitely.
I thought that was pretty good.
I think just personally, if they had have just, so remember in some of the previous episodes, we had a different color. We had the purple color come over when she was hallucinating slightly.
Yeah.
I think if they had have twisted the color a bit more yellow, as in, so we like, oh, okay, so this isn't, it just because it was so
real.
Yeah. There was no hazing or like even the lens, or I think that's what just kind of took me out.
Because I think there already was kind of a bit of hazing because it was a memory, and they should have done something else to show you that it wasn't just a memory. This is how she remembered it, or something. Yeah.
But purple is about the influence of Kilgrave, and that wasn't, I don't think, him influencing her. So
no.
But I know what you mean.
They had to do like a yellow hint or something to just show it wasn't that flashback.
Yeah.
Because I was like,
or Luke's head just floating there going, "Don't do it, Jessica, don't do it."
I hadn't met Luke at this point.
No, I know. But the interesting thing is, as well, we haven't seen that purple coloration for quite a while. And I know in this episode, there's the realization that she's no longer under his control, so you wouldn't expect to see it. But even episodes 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, like none of this kind of flashing to purple or seeing flashing images of Kilgrave like we did say in the first 2 or 3 episodes, which is kind of interesting. I wonder if they just decided to drop that motif, or whether even if it just even if it just vagued out a bit more, it just seems to have been abruptly like left, maybe. And I've only kind of noticed that now after 10 episodes. So maybe they did make the right decision in the end.
Yeah. No, I think it's on purpose, and I think Kilgrave says to Jessica in this episode, doesn't he, that you realised a lot later than I did that I don't have control over you anymore. So maybe as an audience, we were supposed to realise that by the fact that there wasn't this purple colour over the top of the last couple of episodes, definitely.
So Derek, what's your last point?
My last point is just essentially the explanation for Kilgrave's powers as being a virus. That's definitely not something I would have thought of. That essentially Kilgrave's affecting the environment around him for up to 12 hours, giving people a virus that makes them do what he wants them to do. That's a fascinating idea, and definitely a first for our Marvel cinematic and TV universe, to have a virus being controlled by this character.
Well, it's the explanation. I was trying to figure out why the medically sealed room, because I was like, I always assumed it was just mind control, so like telepathic control,
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
Which you would assume going, but it doesn't explain why just a block of glass in a sealed room would stop him.
Right. I just thought it was the sound of his voice.
Yeah. But then it turns out it's but then it does lead on. There was one bit, it's like then Hogarth had the window open. Mm-hmm. So if she had the window closed in her car, could he not have control? So like it leads to more like, oh, okay, so hold on. This is now we know and understand how it was fantastic. It explained the the fantastical. We're going to use fantastical again.
Yeah. but it's like with Richard Matheson with I Am Legend, making vampires, then it being a bacterial, like a disease, a medical kind of condition. A bit like with zombies, this is now, it's kind of going down that kind of route. And yeah, what type of barrier prevents it? I mean, but we have that, looking for immunity, that Jessica's actually immune to it, which means then other people, can they catch it? And this is one of the things I then thought about, was that Robin has now been in direct contact with Kilgrave, and obviously with Typhoid Mary, and she's got some element of mind control. Has she caught some kind of element of his virus where she is able to use it now for her own ends, that milder form or strain that she's caught from him that gives this mind control? That's what I kind of thought at the end of here.
Very interesting.
I never thought of it that way. No, and yeah, because then that would explain, and it was a great explanation as to why and how they were able to, and that's when you were talking about.
She can be a host, basically.
Yeah, a host, and then also Jessica just built up an immunity. Mm-hmm. That's, we obviously don't learn it, but it was like, oh, you're immune to it, the father says.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I think he wants to inoculate people. So there was a building up a tolerance to the drug because you're controlled for every day for 6 months.
Yeah.
You're exposed to a virus every day. Your body will kind of reject it eventually.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a great way, rather than just that she managed to just stop his control. Mm-hmm. This explains that kind of, the bus crash, the walking away. Like he was directly forcing and trying to throw these virus at her and it stopped her.
Yeah. But weirdly, I suppose in this episode, what we do see is that even though her father has been working on, what we do see in this episode is even though his father has been working on a cure for many years for this, and has the access to, Jessica's blood, he does spray his vaccine on himself, just before he goes and meets Kilgrave, but unfortunately it doesn't actually prevent, Kilgrave getting to him, does it? It's not, it doesn't do the job. It doesn't protect him from the virus that is Kilgrave's voice.
Or does it? See, he faltered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he smiles. He kind of does a knowing smile towards Jessica. Yeah. And then Kilgrave comes in again and says, do it now.
Yes.
And then he starts to walk, and I think the camera pans down on his feet and there's kind of like these first stumbling movements. But is he just doing that so that they don't let on?
Right.
And then, of course, it all goes pear-shaped, that whole situation in the restaurant. It kind of, develops in a way that no one was expecting. Mm-hmm. And so he could be that it has worked, but you get the impression that it hasn't. But it's just that knowing smile and look at Jessica. You kind of go,
faltering for me.
Has it worked? And maybe it's just a ruse that he's keeping up a pretense. But I think we're still to find that out, definitely.
Right. Yeah, I love wordless smiles because they can be taken so many different ways. I took it as a real apology to Jessica for not solving the riddle that is the vaccine, essentially. I thought he was kind of looking at her, giving her the smile, going, oh, well, that didn't work.
I was thinking
back over to you, Jessica. Back over to you, Jessica, to take him out, John, do you want to give us your final point?
Yeah, well, it's directly into that scene, which is all hope is lost.
Yes. Yes.
I love the fact that obviously it's a play on her name, but that Kilgrave is giving Jessica hope by doing this deal. He's still got all his fail-safes in place by the fact that, Malcolm, Robin, and the two guys from the support group are all there on the bar, at a moment's notice can be, directed to hang themselves, and that hope just sees that the only way to sort of knock Jessica out of this sort of good Samaritan, phase or notion that she has that she must save everyone is to actually sacrifice herself.
Yeah.
So that her only focus is then Kilgrave, to kill him. And she wants him to be killed. She absolutely has sacrificed herself by putting the stem of the glass into her neck. And again, it was just like, wow, okay, not expecting her to do that.
I know.
I was like, well, 3 down, how many left to go in the next 5 minutes? Like, what is going on here? I mean, this was just death. Yeah. Like, shock after shock after shock. So this was like, wow, completely, just a huge surprise for me in relation to the storyline.
Definitely. And the fact that it was set up throughout the episode,
yeah.
they were preparing us for the death of Hope in this episode, but I think because both Wendy and Officer Clemens died in this episode, I just wasn't expecting it to happen with Hope. She says the first time when she's being released, she says, I don't have a home to go to anymore. They've told my brother that I've murdered my parents. I can't go home to him anymore. There's nothing left for me, is essentially what Hope is saying when she's on the eve of her release, you know? There was nothing less for this character as described in the episode, so you would be expecting that she'd die at the end of it, but it was still an absolute shock. She's described by Kilgrave when Jessica walks into the room. He says, abandon hope, all ye who enter here. All of these are elements that are saying Hope is going to die at the end of the scene. Be prepared for it. I just wasn't, because she's such an innocent character that has been destroyed by Kilgrave and the relationship with Kilgrave from the beginning, from the first episode of the series. I was expecting a little happy ending for her at the end, hopefully getting away from Kilgrave finally, but not given to us.
And you have that great scene from the trailer where they all step off the bar as well, as Kilgrave sort of distracts Jessica by saying, step off, you know, and they all step off. Like, I loved that from the trailer, just like, what's going on here? And to finally see that, here, in episode 10 was great. Loved it.
Yeah, no, and I you're right, it was signpost. There was so many signposts that throughout this episode that we were going to get this, the loss of Hope.
Yeah. Even just her name from episode 1, we should have known that this was Jessica's Hope was going to be destroyed throughout the series. Like, that's the whole purpose of the name, I presume. But,
and then just, I wasn't, you're right, I wasn't even expecting it. And I think I was slightly sad.
Yeah.
Like, I would have liked to see this character get the happy ending. But again, we're in this Max universe. Yeah. We're not going to get all the smiley, happy pieces that we always wanted.
Any of them by this stage.
No, I'm kind of like, everyone's going to die. Yeah. It's just going to be Jessica.
Yeah.
We'll leave that to the MCU movies. Yeah. All that sugar-coated fluff.
No, it was just, for me, and that was kind of my final point as well, was this scene. And it was just the use of the 5 threats against Jessica. It was like, you can say, because I didn't think, I was like, how the hell was she going to save all of them? Mm-hmm. And that's the bit I was so confused about. I was like, it's like, so, okay, Hope's still dying, but what? And then she jumps up and she pulls.
Yeah.
Now,
it's the proper hero's decision, isn't it? It's the kind of thing that you always see with Batman. You always see it with Superman, where it's like, okay, over here we have, you know, Lois Lane and we have Jimmy Olsen on 2 sides of a canyon. Which one do you save first?
Yeah.
It's with Batman, we've got Robin, and we've got
Batgirl
or the City of Gotham. Yeah, which are you going to save first, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And this is Jessica's choice. Do you save Hope, who you've been trying to save since the first time we met, or do you save all these other innocents that are hanging here? Great moment.
Yeah, and it was actually even the use of the power, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
Where she jumped and then she slowly, you could see her muscle straining. And now, she looked slightly underpowered in comparison to some of the other scenes. But I think it was maybe she was just hanging upside down, gripping.
Maybe. I haven't had this comparison.
I can't say for what. But no, it was just, it was a very well put together finale, if you want to call it that, of this part of the arc.
Yeah.
Hope's arc is now done.
Yeah.
We've gone through, now we're into vengeance.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's all guns blazing, I'm assuming, from now on.
Absolutely. And there's only 3 episodes left. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Guys, do you have any notes about this episode that we haven't talked about yet?
I do. I have a whiskey watch. In this episode, there was a commercial brand that you would use mainly if you were mixing. It was a Scotch whiskey. It was Teacher's Scotch.
Yes.
Yes.
Still no Irish whiskey in here, but
no,
we have
none
Teachers.
yet. She likes a Scotch. She is a Scotch drinker or a bourbon drinker, definitely. Based on this, and then again, just the play on the word hope and Hope's name. But I did like as well Kilgrave saying, "I have hope." The person, not the feeling, but I have that too. I'm a hopeful person. I loved how he kind of went down his own track, whilst he's talking to Jessica. I thought that was really, really good. Definitely. Yeah. But after that, I think this was rammed full of massive points and big events. And yeah, I would agree with Chris that this really does justice, maybe not to everyone's, outcome, but I love that it does justice to Hope's story arc from episode 1 through to episode 10, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for me, the note was David Tennant's performance in the apartment, not in the club at the end, which took me a second, by the way. That's the club, the restaurant.
That's the restaurant that he had made the chef go out.
Yes.
It's a French
Because I
restaurant,
remember the bar, and I was like, does that, but no, it was, for me, his performance there, it was very dark and comical at the same time.
Yeah.
That is the evil Doctor Who that we've all, the social media's been talking, the social media? Oh my God, I'm 50. You know that thing on the internet? No, but it's the dark Doctor Who, where it was whimsical yet kind of creepy, and he was like, I want this, this, and this, and then she just knocks him out. But that was my note. That was a fantastic performance in that one particular scene.
Definitely, and I have a note about Kilgrave as well, because while he's talking to Wendy, he says that he feels violated by Jessica for the way that she's treated him, by not accepting his advances, which I think is fascinating considering most of the show has been about all of the characters around Kilgrave feeling violated by what he's done to them. But Kilgrave is also saying, I feel violated by her accepting me into her life and still not turning into a person that has been my lover and my companion, essentially, which is really fascinating for him to twist that all around on everybody else around him and blame them for his feelings. Just thought it was a nice little note. But I think that's all of our points in this episode. Chris, do you defend this episode of Jessica Jones?
I do. Although that negative of Robin, I still think it was a fantastic episode. It wrapped up a lot of arcs. It raised some new questions that hopefully throughout the remaining 3 episodes we'll get some kind of resolution. So yeah, I'd give it, I defend it if I was having to score it, it'd be 4 out of 5.
Right.
Just losing bit on the caricature of Robin and her use in that scene in the cafe, the diner, excuse me. But overall, it was a strong episode. Again, very well written. The 1,000 Cuts scene was just brilliant. It was a horror film. Horror film came to life.
Yeah.
On this celluloid screen. But it was just overall, it was a really strong episode with 2 weak scenes.
Right.
And you can't blame that. Again, we're going into this 13-hour long film. They're going to have some filler in between where you need to move a plot point along.
Yeah.
And the easiest way to do it is, here we'll take character X that's rarely used and we'll just throw her in and she can be the plot, the turning point. But overall, it was a really good episode. Again, I said, if I had to score it, 4 out of 5.
Right.
But
strong score for me.
Huh?
Strong score for me.
Strong score, because it was fantastic. Just the use of Robin.
Right.
Literally, I would have given it, as John said, he thought it was some of the best episodes he's seen so this season. For me, it would have been, except that little bit with Robin.
Right.
Or just her character. If they had made it Pam, no, you couldn't make it Pam.
No.
If you could have made it Wendy, if you hadn't killed her. Something, just someone else on the fringes.
Right.
Just the use of Robin was too small. They didn't build the character enough.
Right.
But everything else was fantastic.
Right. And John, do you defend this episode of Jessica Jones?
Oh, I do. I do defend this episode of Jessica Jones. I'm not going to give it a perfect score, which I think I could almost do.
Right.
And I might want to revise that once 13 episodes are done. But I'm giving this 49,000 cuts out of 50,000 cuts.
Right.
And in old currency, that's 4.9 knife swipes out of 5. I love this episode. It gave me shocks. It gave me heartache. It was jam-packed with story. It was jam-packed with action. It had the birth of Simpson's character, which I can't wait to see how that progresses further. It gave essentially then the start of the death knell with his and Trisha's relationship. I suspect, I mean, she's certainly wary of him, so I expect that to head south pretty quickly. I loved the sort of the end of Hope's story. I mean, shocking, brutal, unexpected. Clement's death, unexpected. Hogarth, I mean, her comeuppance in this in terms of losing the two people that she had a relationship with and essentially losing the respect of Jessica, absolutely deserved. But I mean, again, then the tragedy of Wendy's death, I think seeing more backstory with Kilgrave and Jessica and just how delusional he is on top of his psychotic tendencies and his own self-centeredness, like, unbelievable. So for me, this was almost perfect, as I say, for me. I loved Robin. I loved how she was developed as well. But I suppose ultimately just that reveal of Malcolm, saying that he hid Ruben's body and her finding out the way she did. I think it was just that. That's the only reason I don't give the extra 1,000 cuts onto this score is for that. And I think mainly as well, it's down to the fact that it didn't feel real that Malcolm exposed that side of him in that forum the way he did, and for her to then to turn around like that. But otherwise, that's minor niggles for me. Overall, absolutely a great jam-packed episode here. Really well written, well directed, well acted, and I cannot wait for episode 11. However, I suspect it won't live up to what this has delivered. I mean, it's not episode 11's fault. This was just, for me, really, really, really good, and the best episode for me so far.
Right.
Derek, with that resounding endorsement from me, do you defend this episode of Jessica Jones?
No pressure, by the way.
No pressure. I am definitely not going against either of you two. This is one of the best episodes of the show so far. But so much happened. I wasn't able to catch my breath for some of it. The death of Clemens, unfortunately, that's something that I just was so unexpected for me, and I wish it hadn't happened. The death of Wendy, again, so unexpected and so shocking, and I wish it hadn't happened. The death of Hope, the end of Hope, I wish it hadn't happened. I really wish all three of them hadn't happened in this episode at the same time, because there's no way of experiencing emotions for all three of them at the same time in 55 minutes. I don't think I have enough in me to feel for the death of all of these three quite major characters in my head, or three that I thought were going to be quite major characters anyway. They do need to start wrapping up these stories as they get towards the end of the series, but I wish we'd had maybe Clemens at the end of last episode, Wendy this episode, and Hope next episode. There's no way the next 3 episodes could be as high a level as this episode. I think that's where my concern is. I don't score these episodes, as you know. If I was, this would definitely be on the high end of my scale. Probably 4 swinging bodies out of 5, closer to Chris. Maybe something like that. But yeah, I loved it, and I cannot wait for the next 3. We're very close to the end here, and I can't wait to just cane through the rest of the episodes. Brilliant.
But we can't cane them because of you.
My fault, but not too long left. 3 more weeks to go. Don't be worrying.
And I think with that, we have some feedback for this episode of the podcast.
Yeah, we have some feedback which came into the email address, feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. If you want to share your feedback about any episodes of Jessica Jones, or as we go into Agent Carter and all the other movies, just make sure you send the feedback to that email address. Our first piece of feedback came from Rebecca Sylvester, entitled Kilgrave versus Kingpin. So this is one of the points that we made on one of our previous episodes. Who is your favorite villain of the two, Kilgrave or Kingpin? Rebecca says, if I had to choose to become one of those 2 characters, it would definitely be Kilgrave. Not only is he powered, but he has no remorse, no guilt. He wants what he wants and then he gets it. There is no tortured soul there. By contrast, Kingpin literally lies awake at night thinking about what has happened and what he's done. He believes his actions are an unpleasant necessity. There is a certain attractive quality to having no conscience, I guess. Not being a sociopath myself, there are many times when I have wished I didn't have the conscience to regret an unkind word or deed. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thanks for the podcast. I really enjoy it. The other Rebecca. Thanks very much, Rebecca Sylvester, for that one.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, I think I'm definitely would be Kilgrave. He's got a snappy sense of dress. Plus, it's an interesting way that it's all about him, definitely. And I think we said that before. And I like the point that she brings out with regards to Kingpin, that, you know, he is sat there sweating at night, feeling guilty, and just fraught, you know, about what he's doing, even though he sees it as a necessity. I think if we do see him in season 2 of Daredevil, it'd be interesting to see if he has maybe completely changed in that regard, that he's more comfortable in that skin.
Yeah.
Because I think there's an element where I think his character would progressively become more comfortable with the actions that he does, and that nervousness or that fraughtness about him would recede, and maybe it would need just a strong woman by his side to help him with that.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to see that, but I don't quite know whether he's in season 2 of Daredevil. I suspect not, but I hope so.
Yeah, I suspect not. I think Kingpin definitely arrived at the end of season 1 of Daredevil. He definitely accepted who he was. But yeah, I don't know whether I want to be either of these two. I don't know whether I want to be a supervillain, regardless of whether they have the conscience or not.
I want to be Lord Vader, actually.
Wrong. Same Disney universe, wrong part universe. They're segmented.
Yes.
That would be the weirdest crossover ever.
If Loki had opened it to another universe using the Tesseract, maybe it would have been Imperial Star Destroyers that came through.
Maybe he opened a portal to a galaxy far, far away, you're saying?
Or Mickey Mouse on a steam train chugging away.
No, from my side, it would. It's a tough one. I don't know who I would choose. I'd probably go Kilgrave as well, just because of the power. That would be literally the only thing.
Right.
Kingpin I love just for he is as psychopathic as Kilgrave from the comic books. The Netflix universe version is a bit more, yes, woe is me. I'm going to sit in my big amazing tower and cry.
To begin with. Remember,
Yeah.
end of the series, he describes himself as the villain. He describes himself as the villain. Yeah, thanks very much for that, Rebecca.
Thank you, Rebecca.
We also have some more feedback from 108 Sage. He says, hello there, oh hard-working podcasters. Currently, Derek, Chris, and John, with Irene unfortunately absent, right? You got all the spelling right as well there, 108. Very good. My name is 108 Sage, and I'm based out of Athens, Georgia, so I'll admit to at least 7% of the reason I enjoy your podcast so much is because of your accents. Thank you so much for that.
Why only 7? That's a very strange percentage, but go on.
He says at least 7,
Okay.
so we're the 7%ers, I guess.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
The level
I like that.
7%.
Yes. The rest of those percents are for your insightful points, mix of comic knowledge and fresh approaches, and best of all, Squirrel Girl shoutouts. Thanks for that. Watch Daredevil.
Eats nuts, kicks butts.
Eats nuts and kicks butts, yes. I watched Daredevil and listened to your podcast to go along with it, but not until after you had already gotten done with it, so I'd never felt the need to write in. And then I quite enjoyed your Agent Carter coverage, which was a nice surprise tied over until Jessica Jones dropped. But since I wasn't able to rewatch it with you, I just revisited it in my mind as you discussed the episodes. I found myself even more firm in my suspicion that it might be my single favourite aspect of the MCU so far. There you go.
Interesting,
Though he's only 4 episodes into Jessica Jones so far, and it's fighting for top spot. But never felt the need to write in just yet. Now, however, I'm just behind you, having watched episode 4 of Jessica Jones and then listened to your podcast all about it. I can finally say some things. I read all those people who obviously not dealt with the real Kilgrave as just being the normal stoners, con artists, mentally ill types, and not actually referencing any particular character. Though it would be awesome if they adapted the Max rendition of Squadron Supreme, as we'd suggested, and adapted. They'd have to, because there's no direct analogue of some of those characters. 108 goes on to say, I'd love it if Hellcat in costume showed up in a future episode or season of JJ Defenders or her own show. I was reading the Defenders in the latter third of its run or so, and Hellcat was in then on her way out of the team as I was first reading it back in the day, in the new Defenders transition period. You mentioned not having seen the actress who plays either Hope or Trish in anything. I saw the actress Rachel Taylor in the short-lived 666 Park Avenue and loved her on it, so I was glad I heard she'd been cast on the show, and she's been even better here. I've never actually heard of 666 Park Avenue.
I believe it was something about the park block. Was that you got you took an apartment block in there, you bought it, and you made a deal, a contract with the devil, and
it's the 666.
Yeah, and you got whatever your hearts were desires as part of that. But then you sold your soul as part of your deed.
Interesting. We might have to check that out to see a bit more of Rachel Taylor in the future.
Definitely.
So 108 finally says, well, I've introduced, praised and rambled, so I'll bid each of you adieu and thank you once again for your time taken to talk TV. Well, we love it. We love hearing your feedback. Thank you very much for that. Hopefully we'll hear some more from you as you get through the rest of the episode of Jessica Jones.
Yeah, thanks 108 for that feedback. It's really good. Yeah,
and I thank you very much, and I have to agree, if we got some Scotch and Supreme Hyperion action in there, I don't think it will happen, but I love it. I would love it if it would.
Really love the idea.
And I'd love to see Hellcat as well. I'd love to see how Trish becomes Hellcat, definitely.
Yeah.
You know, she's been Patsy, she's Trish. Will we see her as Hellcat? Or some form of that, I wonder. Yeah. That would be cool. Yeah.
Hopefully. Well, thanks very much for your feedback. If you want to send any more feedback, send it to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. And make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe to us at defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes if you're an Apple user, or you can subscribe to us in any good podcast catcher just by searching Defenders TV Podcast. With all the stuff that we've got coming up, hopefully you'll get to join us for all of those episodes.
Yeah, and you can also join us on our group or page on Facebook. Just search Defenders TV Podcast, or follow us on Twitter at DefendersCast. But again, thank you so much for listening, and we will speak with you next time.
See you guys, and just stay away from any ledges.
We'll be back next week with episode 11 of Jessica Jones, aka I've Got the Blues. Looking forward to that, and thanks very much for listening.
Bye.
Ta.
This has been a Flickering Myth Podcast Network production. For more information, head over to flickeringmyth.com for more shows like it. Find this show in iTunes by searching for the podcast name, and head over to youtube.com/Flickering Myth to subscribe to the Flickering Myth movie show. We'll see you on the next podcast. Take care. Bye bye.